Yes, I just discovered why. Now you can hear me. Can you hear me now? Tell me if you can hear me now. I had a different headphones set in. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? No? Yes? Yes. Okay. Thank you so much for putting that in the chat. Okay, so let's start again. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Parshas Matos Masai, where we will be reflecting upon our personal journeys. And the first important thing for us to know about personal journeys is that it's personal to us. Nobody has our journey, and our journey is not like anybody else's journey. And it's important for us to reflect upon that. One reason why it's important for us to reflect upon that is because sometimes we are so self-judging and critical of ourselves, and we are busy comparing ourselves with other people, forgetting that our journey is different than everybody else's journey, and that what our experiences set us up for different experiences than somebody else. For example, one of my clients, she has two psychopathic parents. What does that mean? Okay, practically for her, I'll just tell you, one example was that from when she was born, when she was a newborn, they made sure to leave her with different babysitters, in order that she not form a healthy bond with the parents. They didn't want her to have a healthy attachment, and she struggled with anxiety most of her life. And hi, great to see you. It's so tragic, okay? But the parents could actually do that to a child, would actually construct a life filled with anxiety in order that they shouldn't have, a deep, loving connection. Well, that certainly sets up a child for all kinds of life issues. Rav Shlomo Hoffman, in his Sefer Binyan Nefesh Ha'adam, he says that the human child is so much more vulnerable than all other creatures the Kadosh Baruch Hu has made. Other animals, they get up and walk right after they're born, or they can feed themselves. A matter of weeks, and a baby bird, barn owl, or baby lambs, they may nurse, or they may be fed by their parent, but they basically could live. They can live by themselves. It's just a couple of weeks or months, and an animal child, an animal cub or whatever, can be independent. But human child, we could arguably say that until 22 they might not be independent. We could, the halacha is, okay, on a serious note, the halacha says that until age 6 a child is our first priority, because they are completely dependent until age 6. Now, a 6-year-old lamb is already a full-grown parent sheep, probably, okay? So we are much more vulnerable than animals. And the Kadosh Baruch has created this utter dependence on parents for a reason. That's part of our journey. So whatever kind of relationship we had with our parents was part of our personal journey. And Kadosh Baruch Hu crafted it exactly for us to be exactly who we're supposed to be. Contrasting that one client with another participant in a recent class that I was giving in Beis Shemesh. Baruch Hashem, zecher to give a live class in Beis Shemesh these days. And one of the ladies in this class, when we were sharing, one of the first questions that I asked in this class was, how did you make it through the war so far? Like, what were the tools that you had? And the way that this particular class member shared how the kind of emunah that she had, and the kind of true trust that she had, and the sense of being loved by Kadosh Baruch Hu through everything, the way that she was sharing it, it was clear to me that she had loving parents of an exceptional nature. I could hear that in the way that she was expressing how loved and cared for she felt, even in times of challenges. She brought various other anecdotes to share this. And after the class, one of the members said, "Did you know who that member was?" I said, "I have no idea who she was." And she said she's the child of very, very chashuv, very important and holy people. It was something so clear to be born of people who genuinely live and breathe and give over emuna and bitachon and unconditional love. Of course, that's going to be an entirely different journey than the journey of this other client who had two, like not just sick, but really interpersonally dangerous parents. Clearly, it's going to be a different journey, and Hakadosh Baruch Hu takes us on this journey. We are given the start in life that we need for our soul in this place, and it's brought down that our soul is asked before we're brought into this world who it wants to be born to, who are going to be the major players in its life, and the soul agrees because the soul understands that these are tikkunim, these are things that need to be processed in this world. There are no new souls. We are all old souls. We're all Gilgulim. We've all been here before in this world, and we hope we won't have to come back again. We hope that we can complete the tikkun, complete the fixing our souls, whatever we need to do in this lifetime, Be'ezah Hashem. Part of it are the people that brought us into this world, and part of it is what we needed to go through with our parents. Every parent imparts something to their children, and we as parents, I don't know any parent who doesn't feel in some way guilty for the mistakes they made with their children. Of course, we made mistakes. There is no parent who never made a mistake. And when we talk about that, I always ask, so who was the first parent in history whose child made a devastating mistake? And maybe I want to put it in the chat. Go on, let's all just, let's be a little bit interactive today. Okay, who was the first parent whose child made a devastating mistake? Can we want to put that in the chat, ladies? To see who's listening. If no one puts it in the chat, then I'll just have to give away my answer. Adam Harishai. Exactly. Well, actually, I would take it a step further, and I would say HaKadosh Baruch Hu was the parent. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was the parent of Adam Harishai, who made a devastating mistake. And also Adam Harishai was a parent whose child made devastating mistakes. So this is built into creation of parents who had children who have made decisions that ended up changing the path of the world. And it's part of Kadosh Baruch Hu's plan. So whilst we may feel guilty, and we certainly have things to do tshuva for, but still we have to understand that. And I believe with perfect faith that exists within me because of my Shorish Neshama. I believe that the Creator may be blessed. Who? Asa Aise V'Yase L'Kol HaMaisim. He alone, Hu Levadoi. He alone, Asa did, Aise does, V'Yase and will do everything. The outcome of everything that happens in this world is only the Ribono Shel Olam. We cannot create an outcome. No matter how good or bad we are, no matter how much effort we put in or don't put in, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one who creates every single outcome. So all the outcomes, whatever reality we're living with, is only HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We may need to do tshuva about the fact that we did too much ishtadlus or we didn't do enough ishtadlus, but that's our personal tshuva cheshbon with the Ribono Shel Olam. And truly, looking back through our lives is the only way that we can come to an accurate assessment of really where we have to do tshuva. And so that's what this parsha is about. Matos Masai. It's about the journeys that Klal Yisrael went through. So let's tune into Reb Asher Zechet Tzadik Livracha. He says, in this parsha, Moshe Rabbeinu presents to Klal Yisrael a summary of all of the journeys and encampments that Klal Yisrael did throughout the Midbar. And they traveled and they camped. Every place is connected to certain memories that Klal Yisrael had, to experiences, to major happenings, foundational happenings in the inception of Klal Yisrael as a nation that happened in those locations along the journey. Some of these locations, the Torah explains to us what happened in those places, but not all of them. Sometimes the name refers to what took place and has meaning about what took place there, such as Kivrei Taiva, where they gave into Taivas, or Mara, the place where there was bitterness. Okay. Certainly, he says Rabbi Asher, that all of the other encampments also, every single name had a meaning that was relevant to Klal Yisrael, to what took place there, and to the journey that they went through in that location. And when Moshe Rabbeinu went through this whole reflection, this whole historical reflection that he went through with Klal Yisrael, and he mentioned all of these places, certainly they remembered, oh, here we sinned, here we were punished, in this place there was this revelation of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, and so forth. And these memories are very important before they went into Eretz Yisrael. So Moshe Rabbeinu chose this momentous time before they were going to go into the land. Let's take a reflection. Let's stop. Let's think. Let's look back at everything that was. Before we go forward, we have to look backward. And he said, there is here a lesson for every single person. Look at Adam B'Yisrael, he says, for every Jew, probably every person would benefit from doing this, but we're talking to Yidden. Every single individual, every single person himself needs to stop sometimes in the middle of the race of life. We're all busy, okay? Especially, I don't know if it's really true, if it just seems that way, but the fact that the globe has shrunk and now we have input from everywhere around the globe, there's so much more, it seems, that people need to do, even though we have washing machines and dryers and machines that will do almost everything for us in a fraction of what it used to take. But somehow it seems that we have way more that we need to do. There's so much that we need to do. There are so many different courses. I've heard this from so many women. There's such free information out there. You know, this is a free course that we're joining in together. Okay, here, mind you, there's so much free information, so much free things that you can participate in and join in, and there's so much valuable courses that you can take for pay. There's so much value out there, and there's so much information that we may want to get, and yet women tell me they feel guilty, they're not listening to it all. You know, they've paid money for courses, they're not taking it. It's hard to attend everything. There's so much there, but we can't do everything. There's a limit to how much we can do, and there's so much available. And so we're in a race. There's just so much. In order to actually live our lives properly, we need to be able to stop, and not just once in 5 years. We need to be able to really take moments in our life, build them in, to reflect on, what did I do this week? And that's what Shabbos is for. Shabbos is supposed to be time for reflection. It's supposed to be time to ask ourselves, are we attuned to our mission? Are we attuned to the meaning? Are we attuned to Devekas, to a Kadosh Baruch Hu as being the center of our lives? That's what Shabbos is about. Not in a destructive, critical way, but in a magnet coming back to its source way, where here, now I feel that, can I be true to this throughout my life? And now, as we're just about a month away from Elul, and as I mentioned in a previous session, that Rabbi Asher always began to speak about Teshuvah in Tammuz, to begin to prepare. One of the preparations for Teshuvah, for an accurate Teshuvah understanding for ourselves, has to be our personal journeys. I mentioned at the beginning of today's session 2 different clients of mine. One with tremendously cruel parents, and one with absolutely loving, wonderful, emunah-filled parents. Clearly, the life of these two women began utterly differently, And the challenges of these two women are totally different. The capacity that they have to manage the challenges are going to be totally different. And it's not to blame either of them. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu could have a different expectation from each of them because of that. And if they were to compare each with each other, it would be completely meaningless. It would be a meaningless comparison. Because if we compare ourselves to somebody who had a totally different childhood and a totally different personality and a totally different upbringing and had totally different experiences and associations, then it's literally chalk and cheese. Nothing is going to make sense. And if we're going to base our teshuvah on what somebody else is doing and say, well, they're doing teshuvah for that, so I should do teshuvah for that too, nothing is more meaningless than that. Teshuvah is one of the most intimate, personal processes that we go through with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. As David HaMelech said, L'chol levatecha tasi. To you I sin. David HaMelech understood deeply within himself that his journey of teshuvah was only between him and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Chazal teach us, whoever said David HaMelech sinned is making a mistake. So whatever we see, whatever we understand, and the beautiful svarim written and shirim given on exactly what's there are Gemaras, many Gemaras written on exactly what it was that David HaMelech did or didn't do. So we're not going to get into that here, but in a simple sense, David HaMelech didn't sin. Whatever we can understand is not what was really going on. David HaMelech said, it's only between you and me, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And really, most of the elements of teshuvah are between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Of course, we have to take care of the Bein Adam, la chavere. We have to take care of if we have harmed somebody else. We have to take care of that as well. But our journey of teshuvah, where we're holding, what is appropriate for me, have I improved? A useful measure is if we consider the aspects of frequency, intensity, and duration. FAD. If I have improved in any one of these areas, in the frequency of how I either do something positive more frequently, or I do something negative less frequently. Intensity is I do something positive, let's say, to feel is more intense, or let's say a person who loses their temper maybe loses it less intensely. So the intensity is more positive than it was before. Or duration. Let's say it used to be that a person would only be able to daven with a certain amount of positive intention for 2 minutes, and now they're able to get it up to 3 minutes. Or let's say a person used to lose their temper every day, and now they're only doing it once a week. All of these areas are, Baruch Hashem, improvement. But if we only comparing ourselves with other people and measuring ourselves up, well, they never lost their temper, or they're always davening with kavanah, and we compare ourselves with people who are in a entirely different trajectory because they have an entirely different life and a entirely different emotional makeup within themselves, it's going to be meaningless. The only meaningful trajectory that we can examine is our own personal trajectory of where we have been in frequency, intensity, and duration. And if there's been some improvement, Baruch Hashem, and we can aim for a continuation of that trajectory. We're on a trajectory. Trajectory means the direction of movement. We want to be onwards and upwards, Be'ezras Hashem, and not going backwards. Sometimes the trajectory, goes up and down. It's not completely straight up all the time. That's also normal. And if we see that over time we moved from this lower point to this point, there's a movement, even if on the way we went up and down, but we see that there's a movement upwards. This can encourage us to keep going. So, Klal Yisrael are on the verge of entering into the land. And Moshe Rabbeinu wanted them to learn the lessons of these various journeys. He wanted to take out the Musa Haskel. He wanted to take out the practical application of what they learned from what they had done. And he said we also need to look through the memories of our life. We need to look through where we've been and what we've gone through and take the time to do this. And we need to ask our questions and really think of all the corners that we've been through, we need to look at the light and look at the shadows. We need to be willing to look into the shadows of where we've been. Here we were in school, and then we were in seminary over here. What did we learn from those places? And then maybe we began to work. What did we learn from that? Maybe we continued working. Maybe we were lucky enough to get married, lucky enough to bring children into this world, Be'ezah Hashem. If we didn't, what has that process been for us? In this place, we had a trial and we succeeded. In that place, we had a trial. We failed. We mustn't hide ourselves from the failures, just as we mustn't hide ourselves from our successes. When we remember our successes, we can learn from them. Important questions to ask ourselves are, when I passed that test, what were the personal character traits that helped me to pass that test? And when I failed this other test, what were the characteristics that were weak within me that enabled me to fail in that test? In the test that I passed, were there certain life circumstances that encouraged me and supported me? Our environment is so important. Did we have good friends who helped us along the journey? Or were we feeling completely isolated? And same when we failed. What were the circumstances around us at that time? Were we so isolated that we didn't have a chance to stand up? And if we had friends supporting us, maybe we would have been able to manage better. In so many situations, having friends, having people in our lives becomes such an important component that it could be arguably listed as one of the most valuable components in a woman's life, is having friends and social connections. It's for our health, longevity. Nothing else has stood up in research as having long-term effect on women's health as social connections. And yet I hear women all the time saying, no, I just don't invest time in it. I feel guilty if I spend time with my friends. Women feel that taking time feels selfish. We've been encouraging our children or friends or family to spend time with friends, but maybe we haven't been really prioritizing the time that we spend with friends and understanding what a difference that can make in how we actually stand up against trials in our life. The circumstances of our life, which one of them is the quality of our friendship. Great to see you on. No need to ever to apologize for being late. It's always great to see whenever you come on in. These can make a huge difference. In fact, one of the things that I love sharing, because I think it's so instructive, was a Talmud once came to Rav Avram Pam Zatzal, and he said to him, I want to learn more, and I want to sleep less so that I could spend more time learning. And certainly there was, there's almost no value greater than learning Torah, and certainly Rav Pam also knew that and valued that. And yet Rav Pam turned back to this student and said to him, he was a married man, but he was his Talmud, and he said, but what will be with your character traits? If you sleep less, will this affect how you show up in your life? Maybe he would be more angry. Maybe he would be more sad. Maybe he'd have less capacity to stand up against the trials that come up. And it's true. We know. I certainly know. I need a lot of sleep. I need more sleep than most people. I know that. And I know that many of my children need more sleep than most people. It's one. I remember a conversation we were having with one of my daughters around the table, and a bunch of us were all saying how we just need more sleep, and my daughter was like, "Oh, this is a family thing. Okay, yeah, you just came into a family where we all need to sleep a whole lot more." A different daughter-in-law of mine, she could get away with like 3 hours sleep sometimes. I'm like, I don't know how you do that. And then one time I was talking with my machatenis to her mother, and she told me that she also sometimes like gets 3 hours of sleep. And I'm like, okay, this is like a family thing by them. They can manage on 3 hours sleep. I would be a complete basket case if I had 3 hours sleep. I know I would not be able to function. I can barely function on 7 hours sleep, and I'm being completely honest. I know myself. So for me, maybe that's why this story of Rav Pam resonates so much, because I know that I need sleep, and I know that it affects me if I don't get it. So if we don't look back at our lives and say, well, if that time in my life I had that kind of trial and I didn't stand up, but at this time in my life I had a similar kind of trial and I did stand up against it, and what were the circumstances, and was it just I'd worked on myself, or really was there other things going on? If we never look at our lives in that kind of a way and ask ourselves, what kind of environment, what kind of circumstances, was I taking a course at the time? Was I practicing something such as better health care, or talking to Hashem more, or whatever it was? And we ask ourselves, what other environmental shifts had taken place? They're really important elements in our life. Then we'll never know what we need to invest in more. If I wouldn't have known that, I wouldn't have known I need to sleep or take the time to rest in order to be my best self. Because I want to bring the best self that I can to my children, to my clients. I think it's only fair. I think it's only fair not to be tired and spaced out and disorganized in my thinking because I'm tired. So when we look back at our life and we take into consideration where we began, what trials come from those particular situations that we had, that the trials of somebody who had such cruel, dangerous parents, of course her trials are going to be different than somebody who had tzaddikim, like true tzaddikim as parents, who gave to their children the sense of being surrounded by the love of HaKadosh Baruch Hu from the ABC that they learned. It's an entirely different start in life. Those who had to come to that and find it by themselves and climbed with their nails up sheer mountains in order to acquire whatever they could acquire. And so when we look through our lives and we make a little bit of an intake and we ask ourselves, what messages can I learn about myself and about my journey forward? Okay, the point is just not to bash ourselves. The point is, okay, if I function much better with this amount of sleep, what does that say about how I could arrange my life in the future? Okay. If a person just says, well, I just have to manage on 6 hours sleep and that's all I can do, maybe not. Again, everybody has to make their own decisions about what's practical for them, about what's possible for them. Everybody's in a different life situation now. But if we never look back and if we never see, and if we never notice, when I was eating all that sugar, I was whatever, or when I drank all of that water during that period of time when I was trying to drink a lot, I actually was more energetic. Whatever. Okay, they could be very simple things or very profound things. Whatever we were doing, let's try and understand what. So some questions to ask us is what's going on in my environment? What kinds of things are going to help me be my best self? If I look through my own personal history and the environments that I was putting myself in, part of my environment is the people I exposed myself to, positive and negative. What kind of fallout was there because of that? How much time and energy and effort I had to put into those relationships. The more I'm aware of this, the more I reflect about this, the more I can make the best choice to optimize myself for the future. A person's life is all one long journey. And from his childhood until his elderly years, he has an obligation to stop every now and again in the middle of life and to look around his life and to see. We have an obligation to do this. So this week, if we take some time over Shabbos to think about this, and we could write it down Moisés Shabbos, or if you have time while you're cooking, just to give a little bit of reflection to yourself, these kinds of things can make a big difference. In the Degel Machane Ephraim, Parshas Masai, he writes in the name of his grandfather, the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh. He says, all of the journeys of Klal Yisrael in the desert were 42 journeys, Membeis. There were 42 journeys. And every single person goes through these 42 different journeys in his life. It doesn't mean that we're going through exactly the same journeys, but a representation of those kinds of journeys. We will go through journeys where we are presented with overwhelming trials of some kind or another. And just as Claudia Sol failed in some of their trials, we also failed in some of our trials. And they succeeded in some, and we succeeded in some. The high point of their journeys was Nasav and Nishma, where the angels came down and gave Claudia Sol 2 crowns. And there were times where they failed. The Egel Azav, the golden calf, was certainly a devastating failure. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves Klal Yisrael no matter what. It happens that a person gets lost in the desert and in a journey. Sometimes, one second, somebody is writing something here. Thank you for writing this. One of our participants is saying, I'm so grateful for your words are so encouraging. You give me a respite from my husband's anger and hostility that brings me pain and worry. I'm grateful to Hashem for giving me much needed strength. And I'm grateful to you for being here for other women who need you. Thank you for sharing that. I'm glad that you get a respite. I'm so sorry that this is the circumstance that you find yourself in right now. Not everybody can get out of these relationships. And it's important that we realize that there's no shame in the fact that you recognize that at this point, it's not something that you can leave. Not everybody can. There are many toxic relationships that we, for all kinds of reasons, social reasons, financial reasons, there are so many reasons why a person, or family reasons why a person may not be able to make those changes, but we can change within ourselves as much as we possibly can. So the Rabasha continues and he says, sometimes on the journey of life, it's as if we're walking in a forest and we start walking a certain way and we think we're going in the right way. And all of a sudden we find that instead of actually getting out of the forest and coming closer to civilization, we actually ended up getting more and more lost. And instead of using the time to productively to be coming out, we ended up getting thicker into the woods. That's sometimes part of life as well. But then when we finally get out, we will have learned from that experience. And there's nothing like the person who's experienced that in order to not get into that again. There are certain mistakes that we're only going to make once. And once we've done that, we're not going to do it again because it cost us so much. And those kinds of expensive mistakes are the greatest teachers. We call them Rebbe Gelt. It's the money that we pay in order to learn something. And we've all had those kinds of experiences where we took a detour and maybe it took us a year or 2 or 5, whatever the detour was. It took us a long time and we learned. So we learned not to get ourselves stuck back in those situations again. And that's just what life is like. Sometimes we do get lost. We want to go. But sometimes we feel like we're going blindly. We don't know how to get out of it. And one of the ways we can help ourselves is to stop and consider we may be getting more lost right now. If we don't stop and consider what's going on and think where we are and what the next steps might be, then we may just continue getting lost some more. Only through stopping and reflecting, just as Moshe Rabbeinu did with Klal Yisrael and guided them through it. Only through stopping and reflecting on where we've been can we make the appropriate choices for ourselves as an individual onwards for the future. Nobody else can fully know where we've been and what we've done unless we've shared it with a close friend, confidant, or mentor. Unless we've really shared it with somebody, no one else could really know. One of my clients had a conversation with me where she said that she'd been to so many different rabbanim trying to ask advice, and she didn't find that it was able to help her. She didn't find that it helped her in her particular situation, and it helped her to understand that if she wasn't tuned into herself to feel where she wasn't able to present the question in a way that was going to get her the guidance that she wanted. Sometimes a person could spend so much time going even to the rabbanim could be the right place. But if she doesn't have an awareness of herself, the question she's asking could be completely the wrong question. She's not going to get the right answer, even from those who could potentially be the right addresses. We are the ones who are entrusted with our own lives. And And so our self-reflection is our minimum responsibility to ourselves. One who knows how to reflect upon the different stations in her life and to think about them gains invaluable, meaning way beyond valuable experience. When we really look back and we reflect upon them, we gain value greater than jewels and diamonds. We can then go forward confidently, learning from the lessons. Because as it says, Al pi Hashem, Yachanu ve'al pi Hashem Yisu. We will go forward with the confidence that when Hashem tells us to rest in this place, here we will stay. And when Hashem says it's time to go, the cloud begins to move, and then we will move. When we reflect on our relationship with Hashem, with where Hashem has guided us until now, and how to follow HaKadosh Baruch Hu in our lives, then we will be able to continue making decisions, Be'ez Hashem, with the confidence that Hashem is going to continue guiding us to where we need to go in the future. And if we're here right now, then that's where Hashem wants me to be right now. And when we see the cloud moving and Hashem guides us off to the next stop, we will follow Hashem's cloud wherever it takes us. If you would like to add something or share something or ask something, you can do it in the chat. You can unmute yourself and share. I would love to hear from anybody who wants to open up and say anything or share something. Friends, so grateful to you for joining me. And as you said, thank you for your kind words and support. It means so much to me. I'm so grateful that you're here and part of our community. Thank you, everybody. So happy reflections. I hope that you have the courage to face the, 1 second. Okay, you're saying thank you and good. I'm so grateful. Thank you for that. You appreciate that. I'm so grateful. I hope that I wish us all that we have the courage to view the challenges and the shadows in our past, and that we can learn from the successes that we had in the past, that we can look at the circumstances of our lives to take those lessons forward and truly to go after the cloud by day and the fire by night and follow Kadosh Baruch Hu wherever he takes us. With Emunah and Bitachon. Have a wonderful week. Bye for now.